and most importantly, why the trees are found running straight through multiple rock layers that evolutionists are claiming are millions of years old. Let's also not forget that some of these layers are the size of continents, indicating that these trees and rocks were laid down in a single and catastrophic event, and not local floods at different times. Today, we assume that fossils are a normal part of the cycle of life, since we see so many of them all over the world. Yet, fossilization is not what we observe at all when something dies today. Thankfully, dead matter does not fossilize today under normal conditions, but instead, God made dead matter to break down and return to the earth. The fact that we see so many fossils indicates that there was a worldwide event that caused mass fossilization of all life on Earth at one point in time. Think about it. If the Earth today is covered 71% in water, water-formed sedimentary rock layers made up most of the rock on Earth. Inside those rock layers are sea creatures mixed in with land creatures. Some of these sedimentary layers span entire continents, meaning they were formed all together in one event. Multiple layers are bent and folded together, proving rapid burial events created them. We find trees spanning through multiple layers of rock, and all over the globe we find massive areas of erosion, such as great canyons carved out. It is obvious that God left all of this evidence behind as a testimony to the biblical flood.
The second most powerful evidence are the fossils that are in these sedimentary layers. To produce a fossil requires, in most cases, especially for the larger kinds of organisms, requires complete burial and rapid burial. And that automatically speaks of catastrophic conditions. So the fact that we find so many fossils so well preserved, many of them with evidence that the animals were buried alive, is another powerful evidence for a flood cataclysm.
There's a lot of fossils in museums. In fact, the museums are full. They don't want any more fossils. The basements are full. Museums have collected 1 billion fossils. And scientists suggest that in the rocks, and you could find these, there are trillions of fossils. If you see an animal die along the side of the road, like a possum or a deer, pretty soon that deer or that possum is gone. The bones disintegrate, scavengers come, the mice eat the bones, the pelt falls apart. 10 years later, it's just dust. There's nothing. And yet there's these trillion fossils. Here's why we have a trillion fossils. There was this enormous flood. It was a worldwide flood. Tsunamis were racing across, bringing in sediment and quickly burying these animals. As the flood receded, all this ocean water percolated back through the sand that was covering the animals and provided the minerals to change the bones into fossils. And that's how you get trillions of fossils. You have to have a worldwide flood.
The one thing we frequently observe is that the fossils have been exquisitely preserved. What do I mean by that? Well, we find all the details preserved in place. For example, fish about to swallow another fish, and it's been buried. That tells you it had to be very rapid to preserve those details. Another example, we've got ichthyosaurs, which are marine reptiles, some of these up to 6 feet long, and they've been buried in the process of giving birth to a baby. Another case of 10, 12 foot long fish with an undigested fish in its stomach. The details of wings of wasps.
The wings are open and the legs are in the flight position. What can we think about? They were flying, and those insects were trying to escape. They're trying to go somewhere, but they just got trapped with all the sediments of the waters of the flood, and that's why we can study them.
All these details require extremely rapid burial. It fits exactly with what the Bible says. It's consistent. The destruction of the flood was rapid, sudden, catastrophic on a global scale, preserving these creatures sometimes in life positions, caught in the action of doing something, and the details exquisitely preserved. That's consistent with the biblical record of the flood.
It may surprise you to learn that all of the rock layers of the world, the named rock layers like the Cambrian, the Jurassic, all of the layers of the world have saltwater creatures. Well, what greater proof would you need that this was from a worldwide flood, that there's saltwater creatures in all the layers? Now, this is in the middle of the continents. How did these saltwater creatures get here? It would have to be a flood. Now, the evolution scientists have to explain where these saltwater creatures came from, how they got there. You're saying, Mr. Evolution Scientist, that there's saltwater creatures in all these layers, and you're saying the oceans rose, covered the middle of the United States, and went back down, went back up, went back down, multiple times, at least a dozen times. Occam's razor would say, it's more simple to believe in one flood than more than a dozen worldwide floods. If you go to a museum today and look at the dinosaur displays, you'll notice that the animals look strange and unusual with the dinosaurs. Have you ever seen a boa constrictor at a museum display wrapped around a T-Rex's leg? No, but they have found boa constrictors with dinosaurs. Have you ever seen a box turtle at the feet of a Stegosaurus? No, but they found box turtles with dinosaurs. Have you ever seen a T-Rex with a duck flying over him? No, but ducks have been found with dinosaurs. All 7 groups of animals today have been found with the dinosaurs, and they look the same. Museum displays don't show that. So if they actually put the animals they found with the dinosaurs, people would look at those displays and say, well, evolution hasn't occurred, it's just the dinosaurs went extinct. But scientists have withheld the modern animals from their dinosaur displays to promote the idea that evolution occurred.
You know, the soft tissue analysis in dinosaurs that's been recent has been a little bit of an enigma to those who believe that the Earth and the universe is really old. Mary Schweitzer in the 1990s and the early 2000s first found this like elastic material in arteries. Elastic material means you pull it and it reloads back to its original place.
Dinosaur soft tissue is a very recent finding. They don't want it really getting out. It's not in any of the textbooks. This lady cracked open or cut open one of the bones, and you could smell the putrefaction. Dinosaur bones shouldn't smell like they're dying because they've been dead for millions of years, right?
Well, a little bit later, Mark Armitage started looking at the horn of the Triceratops, but he found bone materials, tissue and bone, the osteocytes, that actually you pull it and it had strains. Strains are how much you deform something. It had up to almost 100% strain.
Muscle tissue in the Santanaraptor fossil, and it was like dinosaur beef jerky on the leg bone of a dinosaur. It was the actual muscle.
And this Thescelosaurus bone, the same thing. We started looking inside of this bone and we found using scanning electron microscopy that it had elastic material, it had tissue. You pull it apart and it goes back. If this was mineralized or it was a fossil that became a rock, you couldn't do this. So it was never mineralized, never petrified. It was still elastic, meaning it was still the tissue. That means this thing is not 100 million years old.
The biblical account expects to find some of that stuff. So like, what was it? Bone marrow?
Red blood cells, cartilage, collagen,
hemoglobin,
and muscle fiber proteins. These things shouldn't be able to last but 100,000 years tops. But these things were 100 million years old. Okay, 68 million years old, but closer to 100 million. The amino acids in the protein strands would unbuckle and fall apart into protein powder, and there is no explanation to this day. Nothing that makes any decent scientific sense, and it's just been left as an anomaly. Neil deGrasse Tyson interviewed Mary Schweitzer and some others, and then turned the attention to the medullary layer. They tried to distract the attention away from the red blood cells. The medullary layer was there, showing that the T-Rex that this bone came from was at the time carrying eggs. That's really what we call a shell game, a smoke and mirrors game. A dog and pony show meant to distract away from the elephant in the room, which was there were proteins in that T-Rex bone. Now, Mark Armitage, working at University of California, did find soft tissue inside of a Triceratops horn, and when he published that finding, they fired him. So they are willingly ignorant, squelching the truth, and this is actually not science. This is propaganda. Now we're talking about thought control and the mind police. They wanted to fire him because they felt that this was a religious position when really he had only brought forth a scientific discovery.